The alien transmission burst through humanity's radio telescopes like a thunderclap, silencing the operators at SETI's Arecibo outpost. Commander Elise Vega's coffee cup crashed to the floor as the message translated itself across the screens. Cease all transmissions. Your signals have been detected. Hide. But it was too late. Hours later, as emergency protocols engaged worldwide, the massive void-black ships appeared in orbit. Not the Galactic Council bearing gifts of advanced technology, not peaceful explorers seeking diplomatic relations. These were warships, sleek, massive, and bristling with weapons unlike anything humanity had imagined. The ships belonged to the Vrian Imperium, rulers of 16 star systems and self-appointed guardians of this sector of the Milky Way. They, had one mission: extermination. Your species has made a fatal error, Admiral Nix Kataari announced via hijacked broadcast systems worldwide. The Admiral's voice was melodic despite the translation. Almost beautiful, if not for the cold precision of the words. By broadcasting your existence into the void, you have alerted the harvester swarms to your location. Your biological signatures are now recorded in their hive intelligence. The harvesters cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be defeated. They consume all sentient life, and you have just rung the dinner bell. Before governments could respond, before military forces could mobilize, the Vrian ships deployed massive energy weapons. But they weren't firing at Earth's cities. They were destroying satellites, communications arrays, and broadcasting facilities. In the chaos that followed, Elise found herself unexpectedly escorted to a high-security military facility beneath the New Mexico desert. The soldier who dragged her there, Major Riker Kovalov, had only one thing to say: "You're the reason we're still alive." Inside the facility's command center, surrounded by the Joint Chiefs and what remained of civilian leadership, Elise learned the truth. The Vrian weren't here to annihilate humanity. Not yet. They were implementing quarantine protocols, attempting to erase humanity's technological footprint from space. If we can make Earth appear uninhabited, General Imari explained, the harvesters might pass us by. But our signals have been broadcasting for decades, Elise protested. Surely it's too late. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. Inhuman, tall and silver-skinned, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed like distant galaxies. Ambassador Krell of the Vrian Imperium. Time works differently across vast distances, Krell explained. The harvesters are still distant but approaching. We have perhaps 1 orbital cycle of your world to prepare. The Imperium rarely intervenes, but your species has potential. Worth preserving, perhaps. Why would you help us? Elise demanded. Krell's strange mouth twisted into something almost resembling a smile. Because in 5,000 years of fighting the harvesters, no species has ever defeated them. Your kind thinks differently, and we are running out of options. Major Kovalev shifted uncomfortably. So what's the plan? The Vrian ambassador extended a metallic tablet, displaying schematics beyond human understanding. We evacuate your leadership and brightest minds. The rest must defend themselves or perish. We cannot save everyone. No, Elise said firmly, stepping forward. That's not how we do things here. Your sentiment is admirable but irrelevant, Krell replied. The harvesters are the apex predators of this galaxy. They feed on neural energy. The more intelligent the species, the more satisfying the meal. Your civilization has just announced itself as an all-you-can-eat buffet. General Imari cleared her throat. Ambassador, perhaps you should show Dr. Vega what we're up against. The holographic display flickered to life, showing creatures so terrifying that several officers instinctively stepped back. Like massive arachnids, but with the fluidity of living mercury, the harvesters moved through the void of space without ships, their bodies adapting to any environment, their appendages capable of tearing through reinforced hulls like paper. The deadliest creatures in the universe, Krell whispered, and you just invited them to dinner. Dawn broke over a changed world. Within 48 hours, humanity had learned they were not alone in the universe, and that they were marked for extinction. The Vrian blockade prevented global panic by maintaining normal satellite operations while discreetly dismantling long-range communications. We can't just surrender Earth to these harvesters, Elise argued during the third emergency council meeting. Sleep deprivation had left dark circles under her eyes, but her resolve remained unshaken. Major Kovalev, now her reluctant liaison to the military, shook his head. The Vrian have been fighting them for millennia. If they couldn't stop them, Vrian think like the Vrian, Elise interrupted. We think like humans. That's what Ambassador Krell said our advantage was. Professor Orion Nazari, Earth's leading xenobiologist, nodded in agreement. The harvesters have evolved to counter conventional tactics. They anticipate responses based on prior encounters. But they've never encountered humans before. The global scientific community had been given clearance to collaborate like never before. The Cold War paranoia of the previous century vanished overnight as humanity faced extinction. Russian quantum physicists worked alongside American engineers. Chinese biochemists shared breakthroughs with European neurologists. The Vrian provided limited technological assistance, enough to understand the enemy, not enough to advance beyond their current development stage. What makes humans unique? General Imari asked during a brainstorming session. Adaptability, Nazari suggested. Creativity in crisis. Stubbornness, Kovalev added with a hint of pride. Ambassador Krell observed their debates with those unnervingly bright eyes. Your species possesses an unusual trait. You romanticize your own extinction. Your literature is filled with end-of-world scenarios that you consume as entertainment. We imagine the worst so we can survive it, Elise explained. Your imagination may be your only weapon, Krell replied. The harvesters adapt to conventional warfare instantaneously. Their neural network processes battlefield information and evolves countermeasures within moments. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Zora Ikande, a theoretical mathematician from Kenya, identified a pattern in the harvesters' adaptation algorithms. They're perfect adapters, but they adapt to what they expect, she explained, pointing to the simulation. If we could make them adapt to the wrong threat. The plan was audacious, insane by conventional standards. But conventional was exactly what wouldn't work against the harvesters. Meanwhile, the Vrian continued their preparations, converting Earth's moon into a massive defensive platform. The sight of the lunar surface rippling with alien technology became the new normal in night skies worldwide. What happens if we fail? Elise asked Krell during a rare private moment. The aliens' four hands moved in complex patterns, a nervous tick. The harvesters will land. They will consume your population, starting with the most intelligent among you. The neural energy of an entire sentient species will fuel their next expansion. And they will hunt down any survivors with perfect efficiency. You still think we should evacuate the best and brightest. It is the logical course of action. Elise smiled grimly. Then you still don't understand humans. We don't abandon our own. As the deadline approached, humanity's plan took shape. Not a traditional defense, but something uniquely human. A trap built on misdirection, sacrifice, and the one thing the harvesters wouldn't expect from prey, an ambush. On the 70th day after first contact, the Vrian sensors detected them. A swarm of void black entities moving faster than light, slowing as they approached the solar system. The harvesters had arrived. Now, Krell warned, we find out if human thinking is truly different enough to matter. They came like a storm of living darkness, thousands of harvester entities flowing through space without vessels, their liquid metal bodies immune to vacuum and radiation alike. Earth's first glimpse of the creatures sent waves of primal terror. Through the population, this was what humanity had evolved to fear, the monster beneath the cosmic bed. Status report, General Imari demanded as the command center erupted into frantic activity. Harvesters have bypassed the outer planetary defenses, a technician responded. They're not even slowing down. The Vrian blockade is engaging. On the massive view screens, the elegant Vreen warships launched synchronized energy barrages. For a moment, it seemed the advanced alien technology might be enough. The Harvester front line appeared to dissolve under the assault. The victory was short-lived. The creatures regrouped, their bodies shifting to reflect the energy weapons. What had destroyed dozens now merely slowed hundreds. The Vrian ships adjusted frequencies, switched tactics, deployed gravity weapons, each effective for mere minutes before the Harvesters adapted. They're learning, Kovalev observed grimly. Good, Elise replied, earning surprised looks. That's the point. Let them learn the wrong lessons. Phase 1 of humanity's plan was underway. While the Vrian engaged conventionally, Earth remained suspiciously quiet. No defensive measures, no counterattacks. Just silence. The Harvesters broke through the lunar defensive line with devastating efficiency. Ambassador Krell's silver skin had dulled to ashen gray as the casualties mounted. This is unprecedented. They've never adapted this quickly before. Professor Nazari nodded. They're hungrier than you've ever seen them. All those radio signals we've been pumping into space, we've been advertising ourselves as an intelligence banquet. Krell's alien features registered something like respect. Your species is using itself as bait. Exactly, General Imari confirmed. Now for Phase 2. Across Earth, millions of civilians were executing their unlikely roles in humanity's defense. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. Deceive the Harvesters' intelligence-seeking senses. In major cities, the most intellectual population centers were being systematically emptied, leaving only automated systems broadcasting fake neural signatures. Meanwhile, remote locations, deserts, mountains, seemingly uninhabited regions, concealed the concentrated might of humanity's collective intelligence. The first Harvester scouts entered Earth's atmosphere 48 hours later. They descended on Oxford, Cambridge, MIT, and other centers of human learning, only to find elaborate traps waiting. As the creatures gorged on artificial neural networks designed to be consumed, they unknowingly absorbed the specialized nanites. Dr. Ikande had developed. The countermeasure is deploying, Elise announced, watching the data stream in. The Harvesters are spreading the nanites through their hive network exactly as predicted. For the first time in recorded history, the Harvesters' perfect adaptation was working against them. The nanites were designed not to kill, that would trigger an immediate immune response, but to subtly alter their perception. The deadliest, predators in the universe would still see prey but not where it actually existed. In the New Mexico Command Center, Krell watched with all four eyes widened. Your species has weaponized deception on a neurological level. This is unprecedented. We call it looking where you ain't, Kovalev explained with grim satisfaction. Old hunting trick. But the celebration was premature. On the 8th day of the invasion, the Harvester Collective appeared to convulse simultaneously. The nanite infiltration had been detected. They're purging the network, Nazari warned. Adapting to the nanites faster than we anticipated. On screens. Worldwide, the Harvesters began changing tactics. No longer focusing on centers of learning, they spread out, methodically scanning for actual neural signatures. The deception had bought valuable time, but the predators were evolving beyond it. Phase 3, ordered General Imari. Now. The Harvesters had made one critical error. They had evolved to hunt intelligence, not wisdom. They sought the brightest, neural patterns, the most advanced thinking, but not the kind of intelligence that had kept humanity alive through ice ages, plagues, and their own self-destructive tendencies. Phase 3 activated with the pressing of a single button. Across Earth, abandoned urban centers suddenly blazed with artificial neural activity. not mimicking human intelligence, but amplifying it to irresistible levels. The harvesters couldn't ignore such a feast. They converged by the thousands, drawn to what appeared to be concentrated human genius. "They've taken the bait," Kovalev reported, his voice tight with tension. "All primary target zones show maximum harvester concentration." Elise nodded to General Imari. "Now!" The general's finger hovered over the final authorization key. "May, whatever gods exist, forgive us." She pressed it. Across the globe, modified nuclear devices detonated simultaneously. Not standard weapons, but devices specifically engineered based on Vrian insights into harvester physiology. The explosions released precisely calibrated quantum disruption fields that tore through the creature's neural networks like digital. "Wildfire! Thermal signatures dropping in all target zones," a technician called out. "Harvester biomass it's disintegrating." The command center erupted in cheers, but Elise remained focused on the data. "What about the outliers? The scouts?" "Retreating," Kovalev replied. "They're attempting to regroup outside the atmosphere." Ambassador Krell moved to Elise's side, those alien eyes studying her with newfound respect. "Your species sacrificed your greatest achievements, your cities, your infrastructure, to preserve your population." "The buildings can be rebuilt," she answered simply. "People can't be replaced." The victory, however significant, was incomplete. Nearly 20% of the harvester force had survived the coordinated strike. And worse, they were adapting to the quantum disruption fields. Already, "They're evolving beyond our current countermeasures," Nazari warned, pointing to the rapidly changing biological readings. "The surviving harvesters are becoming immune." General Imari straightened her shoulders. "Then we moved to Phase 4. Phase 4 was the gamble. Everything until now had been based on observable harvester behavior patterns. The final stage relied on a theory so radical that even the Vrian had initially dismissed it as fantasy. Humanity's last card to play, the harvester's evolutionary weakness. Dr. Ikande's theory proposed that the harvester's perfect adaptation came at a cost. They couldn't maintain multiple evolutionary paths simultaneously. Force them to adapt in contradictory directions, and their neural network would experience the equivalent of a system crash. "Launch all remaining orbital platforms," General Imari ordered. The platforms, satellites hurriedly retrofitted with specialized weapons, activated simultaneously. Some emitted extreme cold that froze harvester biomass. Others deployed intense heat that made their liquid bodies boil. Some used sound waves, others electromagnetic pulses. Each required a different biological adaptation. On the planetary surface, the remaining military forces deployed equally diverse weapons. No two regions used the same approach. "They can't adapt to everything at once," Elise explained to Krell, as they watched the chaotic battle unfold. "Their perfect adaptation is becoming perfect confusion." For the first time in 5,000 years of Vrian records, the harvesters began to retreat in disarray. Their hive mind, overwhelmed by contradictory evolutionary imperatives, fractured. "It's working," Krell whispered in disbelief. "Your species has weaponized chaos itself." The harvester retreat created a momentary reprieve, but humanity's victory remained precariously balanced. The command center hummed with exhausted determination as tacticians tracked the regrouping swarm just beyond Mars' orbit. "They're communicating differently now," observed Dr. Ikande, studying the signal patterns. "The hive mind is fragmenting into smaller collectives. They're adapting to our disruption by decentralizing." Krell's expression, difficult to read on alien features, darkened. "This is unprecedented. The harvesters have always operated as a singular entity. If they're evolving new organizational structures, then we've forced them to adapt in ways they never have before," Elise finished. "Good. General Imari wasn't convinced." "How is that good? We've made them change tactics." Exactly, Elise replied. They're abandoning 5,000 years of successful hunting patterns because of us. They're improvising. And improvisation means making mistakes. The orbital sensors suddenly flared with alerts. The fragmented harvester collectives were moving again, but not in retreat. They were spreading out, encircling Earth in a complex formation. They're establishing a blockade, Kovalev realized. They mean to starve us out. Ambassador Krell's multiple limbs twitched in what humans had come to recognize as agitation. This is the siege tactic. They've used it on 17 worlds in our history. They surround the planet, prevent any escape, and gradually tighten the net until the population has nowhere left to hide. How long does the siege typically last? Nazari asked. Until extinction, Krell replied simply. Days, weeks, however long it takes. For the first time since the crisis began, hopelessness settled over the command center. Humanity had thrown everything at the harvesters: deception, sacrifice, contradictory attack patterns, and still they adapted. Still they came. In the silence that followed, an unexpected voice spoke up. Physicist Priya Lagari, who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner, stood. "We've been thinking defensively," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Even our attacks have been about survival, not victory." "Against an enemy like the Harvesters, survival is victory," Krell countered. Lagari shook her head. "No. The Harvesters feed on neural energy. The more complex the intelligence, the more satisfying the meal. We've been trying to hide our intelligence or disguise it. What if we weaponized it instead?" The room fell silent as she outlined a plan so audacious that even the humans thought it impossible. Krell declared it suicide. General Imari called it a last resort. But as the Harvester siege tightened, last resorts were all that remained. The plan required the most dangerous resource in the universe: direct neural interface with the Harvesters themselves. "We need volunteers," Lagari explained. "Minds capable of withstanding the initial contact long enough to deploy the cognitive virus." The cognitive virus was elegantly simple: recursive paradoxes that would spread through the Harvester network like wildfire. Problems with no solutions, questions that created contradictions when answered, the kind of logical loops that even advanced AI systems couldn't resolve. "You're suggesting we give these creatures indigestion," Kovalev said with a dark chuckle. "I'm suggesting we poison them with the very thing they feed on," Lagari corrected. Human thought, weaponized. The volunteers came forward: philosophers, mathematicians, quantum physicists, and, surprisingly, poets and artists. Those whose minds worked in impossible dimensions, whose thoughts created meaning from chaos. As the Harvesters began their final approach, humanity prepared its most desperate gambit. The neural interfaces were established in heavily fortified bunkers worldwide. "Ready to begin transmission," Elise reported, her voice steady despite the knowledge that this could be humanity's final act. General Imari nodded grimly. "Commence. Operation Paradox." The volunteers closed their eyes, the neural interfaces hummed to life, and humanity launched its final attack, not with weapons, but with thought itself. The Paradox attack hit the Harvester collectives like a storm of mental lightning. Across the neural interfaces, humanity's brightest minds projected directly into the hive consciousness. Gödel's incompleteness theorems, quantum superposition principles, Zen koans, mathematical impossibilities, and artistic concepts beyond logical definition. From the command center monitors, they watched the Harvester siege formation shudder in real time. The creature's perfect biological adaptability couldn't process paradoxes that defied adaptation itself. Their neural network, designed to absorb and understand any intelligence it encountered, began to fracture under concepts that were inherently unresolvable. "It's working," Nazari whispered, watching the biometric readings of the Harvester collectives. Their neural patterns are destabilizing. Ambassador Krell moved closer to the screens. All four eyes widened in what humans had learned to recognize as astonishment. In 5,000 years of conflict, no species has ever... You're not killing them. You're confusing them. Not just confusing them, Elise corrected. We're forcing them to question their purpose, their nature, their very existence. The cognitive virus spread through the Harvester network exponentially, carried by their own communication channels. Creatures that had evolved to consume intelligence were now choking on it, not because the thoughts were too complex, but because they were unexpectedly, uniquely human. Logic that circled back on itself, emotions that contradicted reason, beauty with no evolutionary purpose, faith without evidence. The main collective is breaking formation, Kovalev reported, unable to hide his excitement. They're retreating beyond lunar orbit, but victory came with a price. Across the neural interface, stations, the human volunteers collapsed one by one, their minds burned out by direct contact with the alien consciousness. They had sacrificed themselves to save humanity, the ultimate expression of the paradox that had confused the Harvesters, intelligence that knowingly acted against self-preservation for the benefit of others. As the last Harvester entities accelerated, away from Earth, Ligari's voice came weakly over the comm system from her interface station. They understand now. They finally understand. Understand what? General Imari asked. That we're not just food. That consciousness isn't just energy to be consumed. That intelligence creates meaning, and meaning is something they never evolved to comprehend. 3 days later, the Harvester retreat was complete. For the first time in recorded galactic history, they had abandoned prey midway through a siege. The Vrian fleet, reduced to half its original size, maintained a protective perimeter around Earth, while Ambassador Krell convened an emergency session of the remaining human leadership. Your species has achieved the impossible, Krell announced, formally. The Harvesters have transmitted a communication, the first in their known history. What did they say? Elise asked. Roughly translated, not food, teachers. They have reclassified your species. The implications were staggering. The deadliest predators in the universe had recognized humanity as something new, not prey, not threat, but a form of intelligence. That offered something beyond consumption. The cognitive virus hadn't just confused them. It had awakened something new in their collective consciousness. What happens now? General Imari asked. Now, Krell replied, everything changes. The Vrian Imperium formally invites Earth to join the Galactic Council, not as a protected species, but as equals. Your unique form of intelligence has proven to be the most powerful weapon in the universe. As reconstruction began on Earth's devastated cities, humanity looked to the stars with new understanding. They had faced extinction and emerged transformed. The species that had feared the dark now stepped into it willingly, carrying their paradoxes, their contradictions, and their uniquely human perspective to a universe that desperately needed it. In the observatory where the first alien message had been received, Commander Elise Vega stood beside Major Kovalev, watching the stars with new eyes. We did it, she said quietly. We went to war with the deadliest creatures in the universe. And we won, he added, not by becoming deadlier than them, but by becoming more human. Above them, the night sky seemed fuller somehow, richer with possibility. The void between stars no longer represented emptiness, but potential. The next frontier for humanity's greatest weapon. The beautiful, terrible, wonderful paradox of minds that could imagine their own destruction and, in doing so, ensure their survival. They had done it. Now the real journey was just beginning.